it's all about your firsthand experience. If you've got the firsthand experience to share with your clients and your audience, you're going to be fine. And those clients are going to trust you even more.
Welcome to No More Bad Events, a fun and insightful podcast for professional event organizers and for anyone at any level interested in producing nothing but the best events. Each week, we'll talk with legendary event professionals to get an inside look into what they think makes a great event. And in the process, we'll draw out insider secrets, non-traditional approaches, and compelling stories from the most captivating personalities in the business. We'll definitely get the skinny on reaching that one big goal: no more bad events. I'm your host, Scott Bloom, comedian, event MC, and now your podcast host. Let's get started. No More Bad Events is produced and presented by eSpeakers, the most trusted, easy-to-use, full-service online platform for finding, connecting with, and hiring the best keynote speakers, hosts, and presenters in the world. With the deepest catalog of professionals available through the eSpeakers marketplace, you can be assured that the speaker you book will be the absolute best speaker based on your goals, bar none. eSpeakers, the #1 way to find your next perfect speaker. For more information, go to espeakers.com. Hello, folks. Thank you so much for clicking on No More Bad Events. I know there's a lot of event industry podcasts out there these days, and you chose us today, so thank you. I feel honored. We already have a bond here. I'm thanking you. You're listening to me. I think we've got a match. There's a nice little relationship bonding going on right now. Well, we really appreciate you joining us. And see, we're trying to build up our listenership, and every download counts. As I voice that, I realize how much that sounds like coming from a place of deep desperation. I am not desperate. I'm feeling gratitude is what's going on. I'm feeling gratitude that you picked us. So thank you. And hopefully you're still on. Don't hit the 15-second advance. This is important stuff. You're going to learn a little bit about our guest. So let me tell you about our guest today. Our guest on the program has an extensive and eclectic background. Get a load of this. She is a former hospitality sales veteran. Okay, that makes sense. But she's also a 2-time national gold medal swimming champion, a CBS sports broadcaster, and if that isn't enough, she was also Mrs. Arizona 2020. So who am I talking about? I think Mrs. Arizona 2020 gave it away. I'm talking about the one and only Deborah Gardner. We just met on the podcast, but I am already a huge fan, and I know you'll become a huge fan as well. Deborah is currently a super successful keynote speaker, and her background as a certified meeting professional has made her an expert at teaching people how to achieve outstanding results by focusing on people. Deborah's keynotes address the importance of the relationship between a guest and a host and the fundamental role hospitality plays in increasing the sales volume of an organization. Recognized by Meetings Today as one of the top trendsetters of 2021, Deborah gives us a heads up on what changes are in the wind and how we can adapt to them to continue to deliver the best events. We talked about everything from the complex notions of adopting AI and being open to the metaverse. Embrace the change. We also talked about the more mundane concepts like how to budget in an unstable economy. We hit topics like how to confidently get ahead of technology and why it's important to research your speakers so you can bring in a keynote that's a good fit for your organization. The interview is fast, it's fun, it's fascinating, and full of great insight. With that said, let's jump right in. So tell me a little bit about hospitality today. I've seen a couple of the episodes. I know you have some great guests. You talk with a lot of hospitality professionals. What is the buzz? What is everyone talking about these days?
Well, this whole pandemic has been pretty much the buzz the last 2.5 years. We're trying to get past that. But when it comes to the industry, what we've recognized is that, this is not our first rodeo. we've been through this before. We've been through SARS, HIV, recessions, other crises before. But this one was a different animal. This one was a beast. So this was kind of like the perfect storm that not only the meetings industry had to deal with, but the speaking industry and all other industries around the world really had to endure. And ever since then, it's been like a moving target. Nobody has the right answers. Nobody knows exactly what to do. And right now, it's the economic and COVID discussion kind of mixed in with each other. Travel restrictions are still there, as a matter of fact, but, mainly in Canada and the US, we're still seeing some COVID rises. Europe, Asia, Africa are fine, but where it's really hitting is China. China is still shut down, and that can affect on the US recovery. So we're still kind of dealing with that. But what was great in 2021 is that the hospitality industry really became vocal with the legislation, the Senate, in order to pass what was called the Hospitality and Commerce Job Recovery Act. And because of that act, this is why the leisure industry, the BT, which is business travel, is really picking up much faster than what was expected. So we're really happy to see that that has happened. So that's kind of the big buzz, other than being very optimistic, being very excited, because this is something planners were not expecting to plan at all. So we have to endear the fact that it was a major, major hit at the time. And when it comes to the speaking industry, other than the economy, it's the meetings industry that dictates what we do. So that's why it's really important for the speaking profession to be on top of what is going on economically and if there's a crisis.
I assume you train and consult as well?
Yes, in particular, the hospitality industry, for sure.
Right. So as a certified meeting professional, you're an expert at teaching people how to achieve outstanding results. You talk about focusing on the people. So in your training or consulting or speaking, you talk about what do you talk about specifically in regards to taking care of, let's say, people's teams? That would be for a company, or making attendees feel special at an event, or giving guests an unforgettable experience at a resort. How do you get them to see how important hospitality is just in business in general?
I love that question, because that's my sweet spot, is exactly that. I teach leaders how to be hospitable to their employees, to their clients, to their potential customers. I mean, you just never know if that assistant that sits at the front desk of your corporation will eventually be the president of your company. So I'm teaching people how to be hospitable and how to take action from that. And taking action has got to be probably one of the hardest things right now. People are trying to find their mojo. Where do they fit? Where do they go? So I have recently developed, from my swimming analogies, the streamline method, which allows people to learn how to take action in order to be hospitable toward others. And I think we need more of that today. We need more hugs and loves, from our companies and organizations.
Just be kind,
Exactly.
be appreciative, show some gratitude.
Exactly. Yeah. Yes.
So you're talking to these folks, you're trying to get them, and even now more than ever, when I'm speaking to people, everyone's talked about how the shift in the audience, where people want a more authentic experience. So is part of that having a more authentic experience about being a lot more vulnerable and stuff coming from the top down? So you're talking to these leaders, how are they going to impart this information to their people, their managers?
Yeah, it's so true, because leaders have never been in this kind of position before. They've had to, in the past, I want to say pre-pandemic, learned how to be a leader. Today, we have more people in leader positions for the very first time and are learning as quickly as they can to become a leader. But today, what has really changed is the employee standpoint of view. Again, we're getting employees coming and going from jobs, and they're picking and choosing who they want to work with. So how you are, as not only as a leader, a boss, a mentor, is going to be very important, and it's going to actually affect their success if they don't grasp what it's going to take to be a leader post-pandemic. Completely different role than pre-pandemic. So it's up to us, as in the speaking profession, to teach that and to research that and to consult that. So it's going to be interesting to see how this pans out. I see a lot of leadership conferences coming about our way.
So what is next? What does the future look like for the industry that will affect, both speakers, we talked a little bit about that, and planning businesses?
Yeah. I think of it as what's possible, but not likely is kind of how I look at the future. I do a lot of future trends for both the meeting side and the speaking side, but I'm not a futurist in any point, or else I would have predicted this whole pandemic. But what I do see in both sides, as a matter of fact, is how strong the AI is coming into both sides of the industry. Gosh, ever since 2016, when I was presenting for Influence, a number of years, courtesy of eSpeakers, and a lot of the chapters, I've introduced the robot Sophia, and Sophia, who is from Hong Kong. Ever since 2016, Sophia has been out there presenting at conferences, which means she has taken a lot of speakers places that we could have been hired in.
That's unsettling.
I know, and she's a lot more expensive than a lot of us speakers are, but she's been very effective. And so that is kind of, competition among our industry is here. And on top of that, we've got the metaverse, we've got the NFTs coming in. As a matter of fact, May 5th, there was the first in the world, a hotel, one of the millennial hotels that are now metaverse. And a lot of people were resisting it, but if you resisted the cell phone and where we are with the cell phone today, you might not want to resist metaverse because it is happening.
So tell me, what does this mean? The Millennial Hotel and metaverse, how does that work?
Yeah,
what does that look like?
They just opened it up, and it's kind of like a reality world in itself. So we're able to escape into another world or another part of the world that we've never had an opportunity to go to before. So you're going to be able to travel without even leaving your house, in other words, and be part of something that you've always wanted to be part of. Right now, there's not event space in the metaverse world for us to have a conference in, to where you, for example, Scott, would do an MC job for a conference in a metaverse world could actually happen, but they're not there yet. But you'll be able to do that without, again, leaving your house. So they always talk about hybrid and virtual world. Oh no, the metaverse is going to up that game, that ante for that, but it's going to be all about the experience. And that's where we want to take our audiences. That's where we want to take our clients and customers toward as well, because it's all coming down to one thing, and that's the experience.
Yeah, we always talk about the experience, and the experience is, is forefront and everything when everyone's planning something. How are we going to give a great experience? I know I've been talking to people about the metaverse. So will people be having virtual reality glasses, and will they still be at home? Will they be coming to the event? And how do we keep up the connection with people if we go totally digital?
Yeah. That's going to be the challenge that there's a lot of resistance on right now, because with the metaverse right now, they're thinking, create those early connections for customers tomorrow is their idea of doing that. And they've tried the glasses already, which is not working. So they're working on making it more realistic than just having glasses. Eventually, we'll probably be able to beam ourselves up like on Star Trek and be at those locations. But it's changing every day. Again, the industry is a moving target. Every day is a different day. What I can share with you today could be different tomorrow. And I'm certainly not a tech guru. As a matter of fact, I have a love-hate relationship with technology. But it certainly is moving fast, and it is going to happen. So the more we learn about it, the more we embrace it, the faster we're going to be able to adapt to it, which is something we could have learned a little bit faster when it came to our virtual world these past couple of years.
Yeah, I'm sure as a speaker, you're glad to be back, in live events, talking to people, being able to get that feedback. How did you do during the virtual time? You say you have broadcast background, you did the podcast. Did this feel natural to you? I mean, as you said, all of us speakers had to deal with the idea of, even though we know technology, we don't have a tech person. We have to set up our own camera, our own lights, our own audio. And people were like, well, we're not going to pay you as much because you're just at home. It is so much more work. So I'm glad we're sort of moving past that. But what was your experience?
Yeah, well, coming from the meetings industry, virtual has always been there. It just came to the forefront unexpectedly during the pandemic. It's always been there. It just never was really utilized to its fullest when it came to being part of the speaking community. I, being a in-person, face-to-face type of person, like majority of the meeting and event professionals, we resisted it as long as we could. We just did not want this to happen. And of course, we wanted in-person immediately. But then after a while, it was like, okay, I got to get the lights. And I already knew what to do with that, thank goodness. But it was just updated technology that I had to get used to, me personally. But yeah, I think it really actually drew me closer to all the tech gurus out there in our industry. That's for sure. Help me with this. How do I set this up? And I'm still wrestling with it. And I really feel for the meeting and event professionals because it's one meeting, but it's two entities coming together. And so it's another hat that they've had to wear in order to try to figure it out. But in the long run, it really has benefited becoming a worldwide phenomenon of reaching people that we never thought we'd reach before.
Yeah, I think that we've talked about hybrid over the last couple of years, but I think, hybrid's going to take on a little bit of a different look, I think. I think it's going to be live events and the ability, I think we're using the positive aspect of virtual, which, as you said, we can reach people globally. You said you've been able to have conversations with women in India and Japan, so that part is great. Is there any other non-tech future trends that you see as far as what people are going to be wanting at their events?
Obviously, the hot topic right now as well is budgeting. Budgeting right now is something that the meeting and event professionals are trying to figure out, even though they have the budgets and they might have a little bit more than what we compared to, which is 2019. It's just funneling where it needs to go, because one of the biggest threats right now is that we're going to have a massive food crisis. And in the meetings and events industry, it's like, what do we do with the increase of pricing that is going on right now? And with 60% of our crops that are actually from Ukraine that aren't going to be able to harvest this summer. So there's one thing after another that is going to affect us in the meetings industry. And so it's not like it's over yet. And the other thing we need to think of too, especially on the speaking side, is where, how, and why the meeting and event professionals decide on the things that they do decide. When a speaker doesn't get hired for a particular reason, there is a particular reason behind it. It's nothing to take personally because there's other things involved. For example, like I mentioned just now, the budgeting. The budgeting for food and beverage, if it's going to be high, well, speakers, pretty much that's where your fee's going. Those kinds of things. Also, we're dealing with the abortion law right now, the anti-abortion law, which is a state-by-state decision for meeting and event professionals. So if you're in LA, Scott, and I'm in Arizona, and the anti-abortion is not favored in LA, and they decide to move it to Arizona, well, they're going to most likely hire me instead of you. So there's decisions that are
that's interesting.
Logistics, lots of logistics that go into play on deciding what speaker is going to be chosen and why. And when it comes to speaking, it's not about having the awards or the honors anymore. They want to make sure that you have the experience in the topic that you are going to be presenting to make sure that you're the right fit for that audience.
So let's talk a little bit more about booking speakers for events, because that could, sometimes make or break an event. I mean, they're a small portion, but sometimes they're the one who sort of kicks off the tone of the meeting, maybe even closes it out. As a longtime hospitality professional, what is the number one pet peeve that you have with speakers?
Oh, you would bring this up. I love this question because, again, every time I talk to professional speakers at NSA, whether it's the annual conference or the chapters, the number one pet peeve I have is the terminology. The terminology, if speakers want to connect with their customers, it's really important to know the lingo. Let me give you an example. A couple of years ago, Martha Stewart was presenting for a room full of decision makers. There were like 4,000 or 5,000 decision makers in this conference. She was the opening speaker. And throughout her speech, she kept calling them party planners. So you can imagine who had the lowest evaluation score. But Martha's not the only one, though. I mean, 69% of the world actually looks at meeting and event professionals as party planners. And it's not so much the title, it's more about the perception. And if you want to connect with your clients, you're going to want to call them exactly the way you want to call them. Let me give you an example what that looks like. Scott, would you like to be called public speaker or professional speaker?
I'd go with professional speaker.
Yeah, well, then why don't we call them meeting professionals and event professionals? I mean, just that little bit of a twist of, because words matter, it's like, it's going to make all the difference in you connecting with them. So I think getting to know and just Googling a list of meeting and event professional terminologies will be very, very helpful, from understanding what a podium is and what a lectern is, what a chevron style setup is, to delegating to what a CMM, what a CMP is, to act of God, what is force majeure, drainage. I mean, there's so much terminology that if you were able to speak their language, you would definitely connect. And that is my number one pet peeve with the speaking industry.
So what would you advise meeting planners, meeting professionals, event professionals, professionals to get the perfect speaker for their event? What are some of the things they can think about as far as getting a good qualified speaker and a speaker that's going to resonate with their audience?
First of all, I think that meeting and event professionals, I say that correctly, need to really see a performance. They really need to see them, live and virtual before making a decision. And until then, I know it's hard because they only have so many hours in a day, but even if they had a committee member or an audience member to take a look at that, that would be very, very helpful. And as a matter of fact, that is happening more and more. I know that associations in particular are putting committees together that are in the audience and allowing them to bring a list of speakers that they've seen before or that they, recommend. And I think that's a brilliant idea. Letting the audience speak for themselves on who they want to see is brilliant, instead of just, the CEO or, just the meetings department. They got to open it up to who they really need to satisfy. And that's going to say something for our industry, because in 2015, the last time we did the survey in our company, we found out that on average, an attendee attends 5 conferences a year. And so that should tell the speaking industry, hey, we need to get out there as much as we can. We can't do the same talk 5 times. We need to, always be relevant as much as possible. But my number one thing is to let the meetings industry know that, hey, you really have to see these speakers and really understand what they can do for you, because we try to customize as much as possible, right?
Yeah, well, that's everything I talk about. My whole keynote's about connecting with people, tailoring the experience to the audience. A lot of that is knowing their language, knowing their jargon. I remember there was an event that I was hosting, an awards program, and there were people from another company that came to see me. Now, because I'm also a comedian, they wanted to make sure that everything was clean, politically correct. I think they might have got burned at some point by a comedian. And I have a lot of faith in people who, make that extra effort to make sure that something's going to be right for their group. I mean, that takes a lot of energy, as well. So let me ask you, step inside the No More Bad Events time machine for a moment and travel back to your best or favorite event of all time. So Deborah, walk us through the experience and why was it so great? And why do you think the audience found it so great?
Oh my goodness, taking back in time. I love this because there are so many, first of all, but I want to say the most memorable ones are when, and this happened when I was a meeting professional or hotel sales or even as a speaker, is when something challenges you or maybe even goes wrong, like a tech situation, and then it turns around. It is, for some reason, there's that gratification like, I overcame this. And one example that I was in Tampa for a conference, and I have such a creativity mindset from being in the meetings industry that this theme for this conference was the Wizard of Oz. And I thought, this is easy. I'm going to wear my green dress and my red shoes. Well, little did I know, this is pretty much when I was first starting out in the speaking industry, little did I know when the cameras put me on the big screen wearing a green dress with a green background, you would have thought I learned this in broadcasting. No, all they could see were my legs and my arms and my head moving.
Oh, you were literally floating.
Oh,
You're
my
floating
God.
head.
It was so hilarious. And I think the audience talked about that for years, going, remember that speaker that was, floating in the air and with her arms and her legs? And it was just hilarious. And I think those are the most memorable. What is it that you were able to overcome? as a team with the client in particular, and I was being very honest with her. What happened is she just thought it was one of the best things that made their conference memorable. So whatever it takes to be memorable, do it.
Yeah, no, it's great when those things happen where, gives you a moment to really be live, be spontaneous, and the audience is in it with you. They want you to succeed. And isn't that where we are right now? The audience that are coming out to these live events want the events to succeed. And I guess, event professionals need to know that they're behind them. They know how tough it's been. I think what we're going to see as we move forward is this sort of feeling like we're all in it together.
Yes.
One for all for one.
Yes.
And I think that's great.
Yeah.
So if an event professional was to come into the industry right now, we'll end with this. What would be the one tip that you would give that person? They haven't lived up before the pre-pandemic. They haven't gone through the pandemic. They're coming in now. What would you tell them?
Well, interesting that you mentioned that, because for GMID, Global Meetings Industry Day, which is an annual event for the meetings industry, I was able to interview a professor that went through the pandemic with her students. First of all, she was a professor, a teacher, all of a sudden became mother, to help these students, these young students that are really studying to become, the future of the hospitality industry. And all of a sudden this hits, and now they're thinking twice. Maybe I need to get into another profession. But after talking with her and what she did creatively, she was able to keep them going, but at the same time, letting them know, hey, this is the time to be in the hospitality industry. This is going to be the time, because as we're seeing 2023, 2024 being our strongest suit of return, which I called meeting revenge, it is going to be just gangbusters. We're going to need them. And on the flip side, for speakers, for new experiences, for speakers that are just coming into this industry, oh my gosh, they are on an equal playing field with all of us that have been in the industry for a long time now, because again, there's new contacts, there's new ways of speaking, there's new things that audiences are looking at. So they're going to learn new things along with us. But my complete advice for both sides, the meetings and the speaking profession, is it's okay to change lanes. I know we were forced to change lanes during the pandemic, but as a competitive swimmer, I've always had to change lanes. One day I'd feel great practicing in the fast lane, and then the next day I wouldn't have such a great day. I'd go into the slow lane. So I've never believed in, staying in the same lane. So I believe it really is okay to be unconventional. It's okay to be diversified. It's okay to find out that, what worked yesterday doesn't work today. It's all about your firsthand experience. If you've got the firsthand experience to share with your clients and your audience, you're going to be fine. And those clients are going to trust you even more. So I remember Dr. Ryan with the WHO said that, all countries need to start re-strategizing now, right at the beginning of the pandemic. And that is so true when it comes to businesses today. We need to re-strategize, re-look at our business models. If your clients have been with you before, they're going to love you even more if you come up with something new and different. And overall, I just want the speakers to know that they are not in the speaking business at all. That is a whole mindset that we all need to get over with. We're not in the speaking business. We're in the meetings business. And the sooner you have that shift of that mindset, you're going to start understanding and be more connected to your clients than ever before.
What a great way to end. Well, thank you, Deborah. It's been a pleasure to finally meet you and chat with you. This has been great.
Thank you so much. I so appreciate you and all that you do for this podcast. It is a need and a must, and I'm just so grateful that we're moving forward.
Yes, me too. Thanks a lot. That's it for now. I've been your host, Scott Bloom, corporate event MC and comedic keynote speaker. And of course, your connoisseur of connections. Oh, by the way, if you're interested, you can book me for your next event on eSpeakers Marketplace at espeakers.com/marketplace. And if you like what you heard, subscribe on Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your favorite shows. If you loved what you heard, drop us a review and don't forget to share with your friends. No More Bad Events is produced and presented by eSpeakers. Thanks so much for listening. Now go out and make your event a great one.